Okay, good morning. Let us now solve problems. But before we start solving problem, let's review the rectangular components. So when we have fx, f and theta x given, we use the sine and cosine function, wherein fx is equal to f cosine of theta x and fy is equal to f sine of theta y. Then when fx and fy is given, so we use Pythagorean theorem to solve for the magnitude f. So f is equal to the square root of fx squared plus fy squared. And theta x is equal to this arctangent of fy over fx. And for the sign convention, we have fx is positive to the right and negative to the left. Fy is positive upward, negative downward. Then we have the notation. Now, we use also the geometric method or the graphic method to determine the resultant and the components. So we connect F1 and F2. Then again, we connect the end, the starting point and the end point, then that is R. And of course, Rx will be the summation of force along X. So in this example, we have F1x and F2x are the components. So we have Rx is equal to F1x plus F2x, and Fy or Ry is equal to F1y minus F2y. Okay, I have explained that before. So for the geometric method, we have graphic method. We do this by determine the resultant by drawing the forces on scale, then use the parallelogram method and the triangle rule. So, ano ba yung triangle rule? So, I will just explain that in our example. The triangle rule uses law of sine to determine the resultant of two forces which are not perpendicular to each other. And parallelogram law, the resultant of two forces is the diagonal formed by the parallelogram of these two forces. Okay. So, let's start with the force component determination. Now I will now speak in English or in Tagalog and Bicol. So, para mas magkaintindihan tayo. Okay. So, for our problem number 1, so the forces F1, F2, and F3 are specified in 3 different ways. Determine the X and Y component of each of the 3 forces. So, from the figure, we have 3 forces, F1, F2, and F3 with corresponding magnitude and direction angle as shown. So, F1 is in terms of its direction angle, which is equal to 35 degrees, and that is equal to 600 newtons. Then F2 is 500 newtons at slope of 3:4, so that is a 3-4-5 triangle. Then F3 is 800 newtons and expressed in its coordinate of A and B. So, ganito yung gagawin natin dyan. We have 3 different expressions of forces. So, halos ganyan na yan. In 2 dimensions or even in 3 dimensions, we have the direction angle, the slope, and the coordinate. So, let's start. For force F1, so saan ba directed yung F1? Upward to the right, so parehas na positive yung Fx and Fy. So we have F1x is equal to positive 600 cosine of 35, and that is equal to 491.49. Okay. Then F1y is equal to positive 600 sine of 35 and equal to 304.15 kilonewton positive. Okay? So, for F2, saan directed yung F2? Upward to the left. So, the x component is negative while the y component is positive. Okay? So, we have F2x is equal to negative 500 multiplied by 4 over 5. And that is equal to negative 400 kilonewton. Now, ano yung 4 over 5. So, since x component yan, so we have to use 4. Nasa x siya and the hypotenuse 5. For F2y, F2y is equal to positive 500 multiplied by 3 over 5. Okay, again, we have y component. Y is in the y direction, so we have 3 over 5. For force F3, okay, so ang gagawin natin dyan, hindi na natin gagamitin yung coordinates niya. Although from here, we can see that the coordinate of point A is from the origin as shown here, we have point 2 and point 1. And point B is x coordinate of point 4 and y coordinate of actually from point A, that is point 4. But from the origin, it is point 3. So ngayon, tingnan na lang natin yung projection niya from point A to B. So titingnan lang natin yung from A to B. So from A to B, that will be equal to 0.4 or minus 0.2. So that is 0.2. Then for Y, we have 0.1 plus 0.3. That is equal to 0.4. So mangyayari, ang slope niya will be 1 or 2 is to 1. Okay, so if that is 2 is to 1, the hypotenuse will be the square root of 5. And for F3, we have the x component is positive and the y component is negative. So F3x is equal to positive 800 multiplied by 1 over the square root of 5. So 1 kasi yung 1 nasa x and the hypotenuse is 5. So that is equal to 357.77 kilonewton. For F3y, F3y is equal to negative 800 multiplied by 2 over the square root of 5. Again, 2 is the y is in the y direction, so we have 2 over the square root of 5, and that is equal to 715.54 per kilonewton. However, it should be negative. Okay, so we have here an example. Iba-iba siya, na. So usually, pag 2-dimension or even in 3-dimension, ganyan na yan, to determine the x component. In terms of the direction angle, in terms of the slope, and in terms of the coordinate. Okay, problem number 2. Okay, so we have resolve F1 into components along the U and V axis and determine the magnitude of these components. So although the question is asking for the U and V components of F1, in our drawing there is also F2. So F1 lang yung tinutukoy dyan. And we are being asked to determine the U and V component. So since U and V are not perpendicular to each other, we cannot use the rectangular component method. So we are going to use actually here the combination of the parallelogram law and the triangle rule. So ganito ang gagawin natin dyan. Ang unang gagawin natin is to extend the v-axis and u-axis. Also we have colored red. So ngayon our force F1 is 200 newtons. So it is shown here. Now it is directed downward to the left. Then we have Fu on the u-axis, of course, and we have Fb on the v-axis. So if you are going to draw a parallel line to Fu, so we have another force, which is actually the free vector yan, ang tawag dyan, itong sa bandang baba. So we have Fu din yan. Then yung Fb natin, let's draw a parallel line dito sa left. So nabuo na natin yung parallelogram figure. So ngayon, yung diagonal, ang lalabas, yun yung value ng F, that is actually the resultant. But this time, hindi resultant yung F1 F1 is given, and we are asked of the resultant. The component, I should say. So, ibig sabihin, pwede natin gamitin yung parallelogram law. Then after that, may mabubuo dyan na triangle. So ngayon, before we proceed with our triangle, let's determine first the angles. So ngayon, we have 30 degrees, then 45 degrees yun. Then yung ano natin, yung FB, yung V-axis natin is 30 degrees din. 30 degrees. So we can see that yung FB has also a direction angle of 30. So pag-aralan nyo na lang nga na maigi kasi siyempre hindi tayo makapag-drawing dito. So makikita natin, since ang ano natin, ang sum of the interior angle is 180. So we have 180 minus 30 minus 45 is equal to 105. So actually, hindi ko na pinakita dito yung computation yan. So kaya-kaya nyo naman yan, no? Then after that, draw natin yung triangle. So kukunin natin dyan itong FU directed to the left. Then yung FB, yung sa kabila, itong nasa left. Then we have the 200. So nalalabas dyan, we have an oblique triangle wherein we have given 200 and FU and FB. So anong case sa ano yan, sa solution of oblique triangle? So I think ano ba yan, side angle. Then anong ginagamit natin dyan? Diba sine law, ano? So yan yung triangle rule. So kumbaga yung false polygon natin is for the definition of the parallelogram law, and yung na-derive na triangle is for the triangle rule. So by sine law, makikita nyo we have sine law. Fu is cosine of 105, okay? Opposite of Fu is 105. And that is equal to 200 is to sine of 30, as well as FB is to sine of 45. So we can solve for FU, and FU is equal to 386 pounds, and FB is equal to 283 pounds. By the way, this problem is from Hibiler. Okay. So disclaimer muna that triangle is that problem is from Hibiler. Okay. Problem number 3, for the force and resultant using the rectangular component method. Okay, so problem number 3, combine the two forces P and T which act on the fixed structure of B into a single equivalent force R. So we have a fixed structure BCD, and the angle is 60 degrees, so that is a right triangle. We also have an obtuse triangle ABC, wherein AC is equal to 3 feet and BC is equal to 6 feet. Then meron tayo ng alpha. That angle alpha is equal to the angle of inclination of T. Okay, so it is shown here. You can see that. Now, marami tayong solution na pwede dito. So I will show you 3 solutions, but actually isa lang yung solution dito. Magiging tatlo lang is for the computation of alpha. So parang practice nyo lang, ano? Practice nyo lang. So in triangle BCD, so triangle BCD is a right triangle with sides 6 feet and 60 degrees for angles. Angle C, ano? So by sine function, we have sine 60 is equal to BD over 6. Tama? Okay. So BD will be equal to 5.196 feet. And cosine 60 is equal to CD, which is the adjacent side, over 6. And CD is equal to 3 feet. Okay? Then, let's solve for alpha. So, let's use triangle ABD. So, we have tangent alpha is equal to BD over AD, wherein BD is equal to 5.196 and AD is equal to 3 plus 3, that is equal to 6 feet. And alpha is equal to 40.89 degrees. Then, we can now solve for the x component of the resultant. We have Rx is equal to 800 minus 600 cosine of 40.89, and that is equal to 346.42 pounds. For Ry, Ry is equal to negative 600 sine of 40.89, and that is equal to negative 392.77 pounds. So R, by Pythagorean theorem, we have R is equal to the square root of 346.41 squared plus 392.77 squared, and that is equal to 523.71 pounds. Okay, that is our result of R. Then, practice nyo lang kunin nyo yung angle of inclination of R. Okay? So, let's continue. For the second solution, we have using the parallelogram method for the force and resultant. For problem number 3, we have combined the two forces P and T, which act on the fixed structure at B into a single equivalent force R. So we have the same illustration, and the concern is to solve for alpha. So actually, we have the same solution as before. We have BD is equal to 5.196 and CD is equal to 3 feet, as well as alpha is equal to 40.89. I hope walang question na. Now then, since parallelogram method tayo, so we are going to combine the parallelogram law and the triangle rule. So ang gagawin natin, let's draw the force polygon by starting with 800 pounds directed to the right, then 600 pounds directed to the left downward. So let's draw the parallel line. Magkakaroon tayo ng 800 and 800, then as well as 600 and 600. So magkakaroon na tayo ng parallelogram. Then yung diagonal is the resultant R. Then you will see that from the illustration that the angle of inclination of 60 is alpha, 600 is alpha. So from there we can see the triangle. Okay, so by parallelogram method, we use cosine law. This time, hindi sine law. Although triangle rule use sine law, then this time, triangle rule din tayo, but we are going to use parallelogram. Cosine, because ang given is 600 and 800 and the subtended angle alpha. So SAS ito na case. So the solution is by using cosine law. So from our first polygon and using cosine law, we have R squared is equal to 800 squared plus 600 squared minus 2 times 800 multiplied by 600 cosine of 40. Then R will be equal to 523.71 pounds, and that is simply the same as in our first solution. And again, for our another solution, we have for the third solution, ito parehas lang naman ang pagkakaiba lang dito is how are we going to solve for alpha. So this time I will use triangle ABC. ABC is an oblique triangle. So dito muna tayo sa point C. So makikita nyo sa point C, meron tayong 60 degrees and line ABCD will be one straight line, and therefore magkakaroon tayo ng 180 degrees. So angle C will be equal to 180 minus 60. So angle ACB is equal to 180 minus 60, that's equal to 120 degrees. And by cosine law, to solve for AB, we have AB squared is equal to AC squared plus BC squared minus 2 times AC times BC cosine of angle ACB. So this time, distance AB will be equal to 7.937. Then after which, we can now use sine law to solve for alpha. So we have sine of alpha is to the opposite side 6. Sine of 120 degrees is to 7.937. Ano yung sign ng 120? Yung 120 is yung angle C. So, angle C is equal to angle ACB, that is equal to 120 degrees. Then after that, we can now proceed with parallelogram method. In the same solution, we have r squared will be equal to 800 squared plus 600 squared minus 2 times 800 multiplied by 600 and cosine of 40, and that is equal to r equal to 523.71 pa. So ano yung tinutukoy ko dito sa solution na ito? So actually, dalawa lang yung solution. So yung using parallelogram method at saka yung rectangular component. So nagdagdag lang tayo ng isa para sa solution for alpha, wherein we have used sine law and cosine law, and sine law and cosine law are solution of oblique triangles. Okay? Problem number 4. Force resultant component on inclined axis. So we have problem number 4. Force F1 and F2 act on the bracket as shown. Determine the projection FB of the resultant R onto the B axis. So we have a bracket. At point C there are two forces, F1 which is equal to 100 newtons and F2 equal to 80 newtons. Then we have angles 30 degrees and 20 degrees, and we have axis A and B. Now, axis A and B are not orthogonal or hindi sila at right angle or hindi sila perpendicular. Ngayon, ang question dito is to determine the B component of the resultant of F1 and F2. So actually, I will show you two solutions, although there is a direct solution for this. So ano ba yung pwedeng maging solution dito? So since component ng R about B, ang magiging analysis natin is to solve for R, the resultant. So ang ano ngayon yung resultant? So pwede natin gamitan ng parallelogram method. But since ang dami na nating sinolve kanina na parallelogram method, let us use rectangular method, rectangular component method. So ang gagawin natin dyan for our first solution is to ito na illustration sa baba. We are going to consider the x and y axis and the two forces F1 and F2 at an angle of 30 degrees and 20 degrees. Then kunin natin yung components, then yung resultant. Then I will explain the next step. So let's start with for force F1. F1x will be positive, and that will be equal to 100 cosine of 30, and that is equal to positive 86.6 newtons. Then F1y will be equal to positive also, and that is equal to positive 100 sine of 30, and that is equal to positive 50 newtons. Okay? Then for force F2, F2 is directed downward to the right, so the x component is positive and the y component is negative. So F2x is equal to positive 80 cosine of 20 degrees, and that is equal to positive 75.18 newtons. F2y is equal to negative. So typo error yun in a way, yung answer natin is negative. So negative 80 sine of 20, that is equal to negative 27.36. Then after that, since ang solution natin is solve for R, let us use Pythagorean theorem. So we have, by the way, Rx will be equal to the summation of Fx, and that will be equal to 86.60 plus 75.18, and that is equal to 161.78 newtons. And Ry will be equal to the summation of Fy, and that is equal to positive 50 minus 27.36, and that is equal to 22.64. Then, solve for R, Pythagorean theorem, we have R is equal to the square root of 161.78 squared plus 22.64 squared, and that is equal to 163.36. So next, after solving for R, let's look at the question. Determine the projection FB of the resultant R onto the B axis. So, ibig sabihin, ang kukunin natin is yung FB or RB, the B component of R. So, ngayon, since meron tayo ng R, kukunin na lang natin yung component around or about the axis B. So, ngayon, for the continuation of the solution, we have, let's solve first for the angle of inclination. So, we have actually yung kulay blue na FB is actually sort of a component along the b-axis, and we can determine that by first drawing a perpendicular line from the resultant to the b-axis. So makikita niyo yan dyan. So the angle of inclination will be using tangent function. So we have tangent theta x will be equal to ry over rx, and theta x is equal to the arctangent of ry over rx. So theta x will be equal to the arctangent of 22.64 over 161.78. So theta x will be 7.97 degrees. Then after that, we can compute for the component of r onto b-axis, which is equal to fb, then cosine of the angle of inclination with the b-axis. So that will be equal to 20 degrees plus yung theta na nakuha natin, 7.97 degrees. So therefore, FB is equal to 163.36 cosine of 20 plus 7.97. And that is equal to 144.28. So actually, after that, nakuha na natin yung component of R along the B-axis. So ngayon, ang ginamit ko is by using the post-resultant components by rectangular component method. So ngayon, sabi ko, pwede rin kunin natin yung resultant R by parallelogram method. So, kaya na bahala doon. So, we have FB is equal to 144.28. However, from the problem, meron tayo ng direct solution din. So, ganito lang yan. For the other solution, ang gagawin natin is to, since meron tayo ng F1 and F2, and you can see that F2 is directed to the B-axis already. So, andyan na siya. Huwag na natin galawin yan. Ang kukunin lang natin yung B component ng F1 o kumbaga yung F1B. Then, yung mangyayari, yung FB natin will be equal to the B component of F1 plus F2. So, that will be equal to F2 is equal to 80 newtons plus F1B will be equal to 100 cosine of 30 plus 20. So, that is equal to 100 cosine of 50. And FB will be equal to 144.28, and that is the same as before. So ngayon, ganito ang tinutukoy ko dito. Usually kasi yung student will look at the problem, then without further analysis, solve na siya. Then pwedeng by parallelogram method or by rectangular component without knowing na meron pala ng direct solution. So, we have 80 plus 100 cosine of 50. And usually, ang nakakapag-isip ng ganito, yung medyo talaga mabilis na mag-solve kasi marami na practice ng problems. Okay? So, the best solution pa rin dyan is itong last. Okay? So, pag-aralan nyo na lang na maigi. Okay, let's solve problem number 5. The force system shown has a resultant 200 Newton pointing up along the y-axis. Compute the value of F and angle theta. Okay, ganito yung problem natin. So, meron tayong 3 forces, 240 newtons at an angle of 30 degrees, directed downward to the left, and F at an angle theta. So, unknown yung F and theta. As well as 500 newtons to the left. So ngayon, ang given dito is yung resultant daw is 200 Newton pointing up along the y-axis. So ngayon, makikita nyo, ayan yung resultant. So that is actually the resultant R equal to 200 Newtons and that is simply equal to Ry. Ngayon, anong nangyari sa Rx? So ang ibig sabihin niya ng Rx is equal to 0. Okay? So I will show you two solutions here. Yung isa ay medyo graphical, but let's start with our conventional solution by using the definition of Rx, which is equal to the summation of Fx and the summation of Fy for Ry. Okay? So resultant force component Rx is equal to the summation of X and that is equal to 0. Okay? So Rx is equal to 0. So from the figure, we have F cosine of theta, so that is the X component of F, plus 240 cosine of 30 minus 500, and that is equal to Rx, which is equal to 0. So we can simplify the equation, which is equal to F cosine of theta equal to 500 minus 240 cosine of 30, and that is equal to 292.15, and that will yield equation 1. Then next we have Ry is equal to the summation of Fy, and it is given that Ry is equal to positive 200 newtons. So we have F sine of theta minus 240 sine of 30 is equal to Ry, and that is equal to 200. Simplifying, we have F sine of theta is equal to 200 plus 240 sine of 30, that's equal to 320 newtons. So that is equation 2. Having equation 1 and equation 2, we can use simultaneously for F and theta. However, ang gagawin natin dyan, let's divide equation 2 by equation 1. And we have equation 1, F sine, by the way, yung nasa taas is equation 2, we have F sine of theta is equal to 320, and F cosine of theta is equal to 292.15. So, ang ginawa natin, division para ma-cancel out yung F. So, F will be cancelled out, yielding sine of theta over cosine of theta, and that is equal to tangent. So, tangent theta is equal to 320 over 292, giving us theta equal to 47.60 degrees, and solving for F, F is equal to 433.30 degrees. Although, we know that with the advanced calculator, we can solve by F and we can solve for F and theta by SIP solve. However, take note bawal na ngayon sa board exam yan. Kaya doon na tayo sa long solution. And we have the answer. And that is our first solution. Okay, let's have another solution for problem number 5. The force system shown as a resultant 200 Newton pointing up along the y-axis. Compute the value of F and angle theta. Okay, this time, medyo graphical ang gagawin natin, although analytical solution pa rin tayo. So, we have 200 newtons as the resultant. Then, ang gagawin natin, graphical. So, we'll start with drawing the force polygon by we having F at an angle theta. So, ngayon, unknown niya na, hindi natin alam yung dimension niyan. So, although graphical ito, medyo mag-estimation tayo. Then, ito, we have 240 degree newtons at an angle of 30 degrees downward. So, pwede natin gamitan niya ng protractor and roller. However, pwede naman yung estimation lang. So, 30 degrees and 240. Then, next is yung 500 newtons to the left. So, kung 240 yan, yung 500 will be much longer from that. And to the left pa ganyan. Okay, so let's assume it is 500 newtons. So, ang mga gamit natin dito as figure to be measured, yung 240 newtons at yung 500 newtons. Yung F and theta hindi. So, ngayon, makita nyo yung resultant natin should be directed upward. And from this diagram, kumbaga yung closing line natin, kumbaga sa surveying, is by connecting these 2 points, that is R. And ngayon, ang direction ng R should be upward. Ibig sabihin, if yung F natin is maikse, lalabas yung 500 newtons natin na sa baba. And yung R natin will be directed downward. So, mali. Ang magiging mali. So, ngayon, we have actually now correct representation of the diagram or the force polygon with the resultant. So ngayon, ano yung magiging solusyon dito? Ang magiging solusyon dito is by trigonometry. So, although medyo mahaba yung solusyon nito, pero maganda itong malaman nyo rin. So, ang gagawin natin is to connect this side. So magkakaroon tayo ngayon ng triangles, ano? So meron tayong right triangle wherein ito yan. So draw natin ulit. Okay, let's go to this. Okay, so kikita yung triangle na ito, no? Sa baba, we have 500 newtons, 200 newtons, and tawagin natin yung side there as Q. Then Q will be by Pythagorean theorem. Q will be equal to 538.51. Paano yan? That is equal to Q squared is equal to 500 squared plus 200 squared, and Q will be equal to 538.51. Okay, so nakita nyo na yan. Then, take note, ito alpha. Meron tayong alpha. So, we can use tangent function. Tangent alpha is equal to 200 over 500. And alpha will be equal to 21.80 degrees. Okay? So, I hope makikita nyo yan dyan. So, pag-aralan nyo pa rin yan. Then, next is ito. Meron tayong oblique triangle. Ito, makikita nyo yung F at saka yung theta. As well as yung 30 degrees sa taas at saka yung 240. So ngayon yung Q is given na solve natin, that is equal to 538.51. And meron tayong angle phi. So omega yung nakalagay ko dyan, pero that is angle phi. And ito yan, sa right, makikita niya. And paano makukuha yan? So all that is phi is equal to alpha plus 30. Saan galing yung alpha? So yung alpha from the diagram sa taas, alpha is the angle of inclination ng Q with respect to the horizontal. So dito sa P, pag tinignan mo sa P, you draw a horizontal line sa P, then magkakaroon ka ngayon ng phi as alpha and 30 degrees. Kasi yung 240, 30 degrees doon, then meron din ng 30 degrees dito sa baba. So ngayon, magkakaroon ka ng phi is equal to alpha plus 30 degrees. Medyo mahirap kasi hindi na ako mag-drawing, but yung parte na yun, kumbaga, para sa inyo yan, para pag-aralan yan. Ha? Okay? So, phi becomes 51.80. Then, anong meron tayo? Yung 240, yung Q, at saka yung phi. So, ngayon, pwede natin masolve yung F. Solution of oblique triangle to solve for F is by cosine law. So, by cosine law, we have F squared is equal to 240 squared plus 538.51 squared minus 240 multiplied by 2 times 240 multiplied by 538.51 cosine of phi, and that is equal to 51.80 degrees. Solving for F, F is equal to 433.29. Okay? So, solution of oblique triangle. Sa taas, solution of right triangle, then punta tayo sa oblique triangle. Then next is to solve for theta. So, how are we going to solve for theta? So, ganito, sine law tayo. The same triangle by sine law, we have sine of beta. So, we have that angle beta. Tingnan nyo, no? Sine of beta is to opposite side of 538.51 is equal to sine of phi over F. So, meron na tayo ng phi. Given na ba yung phi? Okay, yes. Phi is equal to 51.80. Then yung beta. So, beta, makuha natin is 77.61. Okay? So, 77.61 yung beta. Ngayon, may problema tayo dyan. Kasi, from the illustration, it is seen that beta is an obtuse angle. So, it should be greater than 90 degrees. So, ngayon, ano yung magiging value ng beta natin? So, beta will be the supplementary angle. So, that is equal to 180 minus 77.61 is to beta. Yan ang problema dito sa sine law, na? Anyway, hindi actually problema yun. Basta magaling ka lang talaga sa trigonometry. So, we have sine value of supplementary angles are equal. Then, to solve, after solving for beta, we can now solve for theta. Saan yun? Ito. Theta is equal to 180 degrees minus 30 minus beta. So, makikita nyo yun, a straight line. So, 180 degrees minus 30 minus 102.39, that is equal to theta. And theta is equal to 47.61. So, we have now F and theta, and therefore, we have the same solution as before. So ngayon, ito, maba, although more on trigonometry, and again, I repeat, tulong ko na sa inyo yan para makapag-review kayo ng trigonometry. Okay, I hope wala na kayong question dyan. Thank you.